concept for BCTV Tonight actually came about in 1997. I was working for Empire Sports Network as a production assistant on a show at the time called Fan TV. It was a regional sports channel, very popular in the area. And within that building that housed Empire Sports Network, we also had another station, which was a local origination station called Hometown Television. During that time, I would just kind of observe, really out of the corner of my eye, that the productions they were doing, were within their own community. They did a lot of different community shows. They highlighted some of the local businesses in the area, some of the local community organizations, and some of the entrepreneurs and community leaders within those, suburban areas. And the staff, they were pretty much, they served as like the producers of their show, of their different shows, which highlighted areas of that community. And some of them even served as not only producers, but hosts of their shows as well. They got to produce and host a show as well, and I just thought that was like just the most coolest, most awesome. That was awesome, man. That really like resonated with me. And here I am working at the local sports station. I'm at the time, I'm studio camera operator, and occasionally I would go out and be a videographer for the high school highlights show, or edit some of the stuff. And also I was the floor director for the Fan TV show, which aired live every evening. But looking at what looking at what they were doing really, really, really like got my attention. As I'm seeing all this go on, I really started to just think to myself, man, what would really be great is if we could somehow transfer this same thing into the city of Buffalo and into the African American community. Man, that would be fantastic, because it's just so much stuff going on in my community. Wow, what a great opportunity. What a great thing that would be, Opportunity for me really, I have to say, knocked really, really loud towards the fall of 1997. I had completed a few months earlier my very first documentary series on the Build organization. And I was in the process of planning a local premiere of the documentary screening of my film at the Hall Walls Center. I also had my documentary premiere screening filmed for video. I didn't really have any plans to put it on TV at the time, but I did have it filmed for video for just posterity for myself. And as I looked at the footage that I shot of the premiere, I kind of said to myself, this is the way I want to do it. I want to have a young interviewer, someone around my age, which is I'm a Gen Xer. We were the young professionals of that day and time. And I want to have somebody around my age as an interviewer. And I just want to, this is how I want to go out into the community and highlight things. I want to have an interviewer that can talk, someone that can talk to and communicate with the people. And I want to get great shots of just all the activities that are going on in the area. That was the general concept of how I wanted to do it when I looked at the footage from the premiere. When I started doing the show, I had started working at the Public Access Center in December of 1997. I had already left the Empire Sports Network. And I made it a point to try to get myself into the community and look for what could be some of the initial things that I could produce as well as cover out here in the community for the show. The very first thing that we shot was the Snowball, and they would have a dinner dance and they had a fashion show. So we covered that event, and we did interviews with the models, and we did interviews with some of the president and some of the organizers of that event. So that was our first thing that we did. We made like I think we did a whole episode of that. So that's kind of how the show started out. I also had just joined on to the local Juneteenth committee. Got on to the I was on the public relations committee. So I was doing that for the very first time. So obviously we covered every event leading up to the annual Juneteenth festivals for 1998 and 1999. So those were automatic regular segments that we had from various events that they had surrounding the festival, from the volunteer recognition reception to the press conference, which would inform people of what they could look forward to for that particular Juneteenth festival for that year. We covered the groundbreaking and actually the ribbon cutting of their brand new Juneteenth headquarters. We did a number of things with the Juneteenth festival, and that turned out to really be some of our most popular and watched programs. We covered everything wasn't completely all black. I mean, we did a few diverse things here and there. We like, for instance, we covered the annual car show that they had at the Buffalo Convention Center. We highlighted many of the new cars for that time. We talked to many of the people that were from the various dealerships. So that actually was a pretty fun shoot that we had. One of the other benefits to doing the show was that public access, even though for all the tumultuous stuff that it was going through at that particular time, we had been housed at that time in the Langston Hughes Institute. And that also opened up another opportunity on a positive note to where we got more built-in segments, because they had it's a ton of events coming out of that community and arts center. We covered the Marcus Garvey Day. In fact, I believe that was the very first year that we had Marcus Garvey Day in the city of Buffalo, and Marcus Garvey's son, Julius Garvey, actually came to town and gave a keynote speech, and we covered they had a parade along Michigan Avenue, and we definitely were able to cover that. Langston Hughes Institute also had a beautiful fundraiser called Lady Day in Langston, which was a tribute to Langston Hughes as well as Billie Holiday, and that was one of the more memorable shows. We also covered the 3-day grand opening of the A Train, which was a hot spot in the late 1990s, and that was back in 1999, and it brought out a who's who of the city of Buffalo, and that was a memorable event. We also adopted my mom's school, where she was the principal at the time, Community School 53. And we did a lot of things with the teachers, and with the children who are all grown now at that school, and that was definitely one of my favorite segments. Was to hang out there with the teachers and the children, and I mean, man, I had a blast doing those shows. One of the other things that we did, which I was very, very proud of at the time, was that we highlighted in personal profiles with in-depth one-on-one interviews. We highlighted many of the up-and-coming young black urban professionals of that period of time, and these would have been people my age. This actually was my age group, incidentally, which was Gen Xers. Today we have millennials. Back then we had the Gen Xers. We had it at that time, and I was really, really proud of that. We highlighted people like Oswaldo Mestre and Natasha Cummings and Scott Turner, you know, community leaders, athletes, entrepreneurs, program directors, you know, teachers like Kenneth Fuller, who was a tech teacher at Community School 53. And we also had, you know, as I said earlier, I had the particular hosts of my show who were also Gen Xers, and you know, we had that interaction. It was really level with that, you know, and you know, it really added to the look and feel of the show that I was really trying to have. And as I said, it really, unfortunately, did not last as long as I wanted it to. And that was really the only bad thing about it, is that it was during that particular time, it was really in a building, growing, experimental type phase. Because everything that I did on that show, you know, everything was an experiment. You know, I had my hosts on the show, but you know, eventually it kind of started to not. Once it started to not really work out, I wound up taking over the hosting duties of the show. So I went from being the executive producer of the show to being the executive producer and host of the show. And I guess the other thing that it did for me was it kind of got my name out there, and would later on, would maybe like a year or so later, it led up to the beginning of my radio career about a year or so later. But it really, looking back on it, was a show designed to be for the Gen Xer in mind, but it also resonated with an older crowd too. And we highlighted a lot of local black history in addition to, you know, the personal profiles and the in-depth interviews. We highlighted the groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings of the Bill Gator Parkway and the beginning of the construction of the Apollo Theater and the development of the Willard Park Playground. And we had James Cooper's art exhibit, and we highlighted some of the poetry and the book signing of Dr. Anthony Neal. I have to say that one of my most favorite interviews that we did on the show, we did have one big local celebrity on the show, and that is the one and only Angela Stribling of BET Screen Scene fame. We had a wonderful time. A friend of mine had introduced me to her mom, who would later connect me with Angela, who would frequently come into Buffalo, and I told her what I was doing and if she'd like to possibly do an interview on the show, and she was more than happy to do it. One of these days I'll have to release, we did do a clip of the interview, but she talked about getting on when she first started with BET and getting on BET Screen Scene and talking about all the celebrities and whatnot that she spoke to and everything. With Michael, told me stories about Michael Jordan and Denzel Washington, and it was we had a really, I mean, we had a really, really great time doing that interview. I kind of made fun of her a little bit with the little Denzel Washington story that she told. That was hilarious. You know, one of the more interesting things that we covered, we actually, for the very first time, covered a full community forum on hip hop culture versus the civil rights movement. You had elders of the community, and then you had the young people of the community having a huge discussion about the effect of the impact of hip hop on the African American community, as well as how it would relate to the civil rights movement of yesteryear. That was quite a discussion. It got a little heated at times, but it definitely was. I can definitely say that it was some jewels dropped. One of my favorite, absolute favorite moments of that series, incidentally, it didn't even take place in Buffalo. It was between Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario. It was a Black History whirlwind tour of Underground Railroad sites, including Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was a unforgettable trip. I got lots of awesome footage. We also went to the Motown Museum in Detroit, Michigan. And as anyone knows who has ever visited the museum, they take you on a tour of everything. And when you get into the studio where everybody performed, they had this little thing where the women can be the Supremes and the men in the group can be the Temptations. Why is it that somebody in there had to blow me in and tell those docents that my last name was Ruffin? Lord Jesus, why did they have to do that? You already know that I got called out to be in the front, right? You already know I got called out for that. So yeah, that is the only time I sang. I actually sang. Thank God there were no camera phones around that time. But yeah, that, all jokes aside, that was really a great trip, man. That was definitely, I had a blast, you know, just shooting that and putting that segment together. We didn't do as much in the entertainment aspect of Buffalo as I would have wanted to, but I was planning to do more. What we did manage to do was we did manage to get coverage of the Buffalo Music Awards, and which took place at the Funhouse in Lockport. No, I'm sorry, Lackawanna, and the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame, which took place at the Trev, which I wound up getting the opportunity to do the induction, the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame induction for the legendary Dodo Green, which was a great singer who had been in the Buffalo area and all around for many, many years. God rest her soul. And of course, years later, I myself would be inducted into the class of 2004, which is still a tremendous, tremendous honor. Well, as things will be, sometimes things must always come to an end. I'm not gonna get too deep into the details of it, but I will say that public access was a very political entity in this area. And quite frankly, what it really boiled down to, as I sit back and look at it in retrospect, was it just boiled down really to it boiled down to me being in a situation which I really had not been selected for. I was bought in kind of like through a back door. That's kind of how I came in there. And it was just some things that went on that I guess just were not going to really be amenable to me. It was the whole thing was just not going to be amenable to me. I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to leave it right there. I don't want to go into that. It's been long enough. But after I left, I decided to pretty much pull the plug on the show. Now, I've always talked about some of the plans that I had for the show. I can share some of them with you. I was going to there were going to be a profile piece done on Grassroots Incorporated. There was going to be some profiles. I was planning to do some profiles on blacks in local media. We're definitely going to expand on the highlighting of some of the young urban professionals. So, but those were ideas, and unfortunately, they never got produced. They never got written. They never got shot. They were just pretty much here. I had them kind of on, as we say masonically, on the trestle board, but they never came into being. But some things did come into being, years later in different forms of other shows. So that's it still worked out in the end. Come on, man. Are you kidding me? The influence of BCTV Tonight is felt all over the damn place, man. A lot of stuff was touched by BCTV Tonight. I'll say this about Buffalo. One of the things about Buffalo and its history is that Buffalo has hidden history. A lot of people don't even a lot of things go on at a lot of different times, and it's just that you just don't know about it. You don't know about it. You never heard about it because like I said, it's hidden history. It hasn't been told. But BCTV Tonight has had a lot of things kind of sprung out of BCTV Tonight. There was a show called The Underground Directory, which I had some influence on. It was a show it was like a little magazine that they turned into a TV show, Doc Martin and Solar Ingram with Compass Productions at the time. It started out as a little publication which focused on the local underground hip-hop and spoken words poetry scene. And they turned it into a TV show. They did a few episodes for a little while. There was also Upfront TV, Western New York Magazine, which eventually became Upfront TV, which I wound up hosting, which was also influenced by which was heavily influenced by BCTV Tonight. Even today, you've got shows that are efforts that are in this social media age. Everything goes in cycles. Many times, I would lament over BCTV Tonight, because that's actually one of my career disappointments, is that I was never able to expand on that show like I would have wanted to. The one thing that I've come to realize about BCTV Tonight to this day is that it was merely a seed. BCTV Tonight was, in fact, a seed. And sometimes with seeds, they're not meant to. Sometimes a seed is only meant to be planted, and then it grows into other things. And to look back on it today, 20 years later, I'm cool with it. I'm proud of it. I may not have been able to do it at the time that I wanted to do it in. It was influential in portraying our community in a positive light. And it also created opportunities and gave light to a lot of people that otherwise would not have been recognized. And that's truly an accomplishment and something to be proud of. It truly was a seed.